Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. How about you?
Pretty good. No restart of the Mac tonight?
No, I did all that beforehand.
I thought so.
I think some of it may also be related to updating some of the Rogue Amoeba software. So I had an update for Sound Source, and I know that it installs an updated version of their audio components. So I just went ahead and restarted after that.
Cool. I know I had an update last week, and I have an update this week.
For Audio Hijack, or?
Yeah. So now that do you have any software out there that doesn't support doesn't support Big Sur?
Oh, there's quite a bit that doesn't technically support Big Sur, and so it depends on what we're really focused on. Like I know homebrew support is not going to be there for a little while.
Oh yeah?
Well, actually, I shouldn't say it's Big Sur specific. It's probably M1 specific.
That makes more sense than Big Sur itself.
Yeah, I don't know of anything that doesn't support Big Sur other than the audio interface that I use.
What is your audio interface again?
It's the Universal Audio Aero interface. It's their USB-C, it's Thunderbolt. It's Thunderbolt 3 and 2 simultaneous inputs, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have 2 channels, so it handles 2 inputs and either headphone or reference monitor output.
Okay. And I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised, but I'm always I guess early on I became a follower of those that use Apple's Core Audio. That way, whenever there's an update, there's no waiting. I just remember Pro Tools. It's fairly commonly used audio editing software, and they did not support Mac OS X Leopard for, I want to say, 5 or 6 months after its release.
Yeah, I'm hoping that this gets support pretty quick. I don't know Universal Audio's track record when it comes to OS updates. I do have a Samsung USB-powered mic where if it becomes too much of an issue, I may swap to that for a little bit.
Well, I put in some things about Big Sur, and I labeled them as compelling features, but I don't know if they're compelling features so much as they are features that would be nice to have for me. And that is the AirPod switching. I was like, it's never been too much of an issue for me, but I don't know, it'd be nice to have that.
Let's go into a little more detail. And the only reason I say that is because I have other workarounds for things like that. So, for example, Sound Source is a utility from Rogue Amoeba that lets me click on a drop-down menu and just choose what input-output I want to use for different things. And I can do it by app. I can do it globally. It doesn't matter. But what's nice about it is I just select the AirPods and they'll connect and everything's good to go. Or I'll select my audio interface for when we're recording. And I don't have any problems with it. But what's the AirPods related feature in Big Sur that you're referencing?
So it is. It's the AirPods automatic device switching. So the AirPods will automatically switch between your iPhone, iPad, or Mac.
Did I lose you?
No, I'm here. Can you hear me? Hello. Oh boy, it's gonna be one of those nights. Hello, test 1 1 1. Hello, hello, hello. All right, hello.
All right, I can hear you again.
That was weird.
Very.
I stopped my recording and then restarted it before I answered the call, so I don't know I don't know at all what that was about.
Well, we'll see if it happens again. I haven't touched my recording, and everything seems to be working. So at first I thought maybe Spectrum was having an issue out here, and I would end up seeing the amplify go to the looking for internet thing, but that never happened either.
Nope. I have not having any issues here either. So odd. Well, I guess I'll as a good edit point, I'll start over with AirPods automatic device switching. It's a feature that comes with Big Sur that will automatically switch between your iPhone, iPad, and Mac, paired to the same iCloud account. And it's supposed to make switching your iPod to the Apple device that you're using sort of automatic. There's supposed to be a pop-up banner that helps you to select the the AirPods on your Mac.
Is that predominantly for like using them with the phone and then coming into the Mac and then being able to just press the button?
That's how I understood it. I really haven't had a significant issue with that because I keep the Bluetooth icon in the menu bar and it drops down and I select AirPods. But this feature utilizes the H1 the H1 chip, and so that it just automatically pops down, sort of like how it automatically pops up on an iOS device.
I'm curious how that plays with like the HomePod and HomePod Mini, and just in general, like moving your audio from one device to another.
Yeah. I haven't seen anything about the HomePod. I haven't really looked, but I don't recall anything with the HomePod Mini utilizing that sort of feature either.
The main thing that I recall, if I recall correctly, is if you were listening to something on the phone and you brought the phone next to the HomePod, it would use the U1 chip to detect its proximity and switch. I think it was that direction. It may have been the other direction. It may have been if you were listening on the HomePod and brought the phone close. Either way, it's something that I'll be able to test in a week or two whenever my Mini finally arrives.
Has it shipped yet?
No, not yet. When I ordered, though, because I was not an early orderer, I was still on the fence on whether I was going to try one out or not. Estimated delivery is like November 24th to December 2nd or something like that.
That's not too bad.
No, not at all. And it's not like it's something that I need or am waiting on. My hope is that it sounds better than that sound bar I have in the office, and I can just reclaim some space and put the HomePod Mini on the desk in there.
Yeah. I was just thinking of that. The HomePod Mini kind of reminds me of those Harmon Kardon speakers that came with the iMac G4.
Were those the ones with the subwoofer or the ones without?
They're the ones without. The sound sticks had the subwoofer.
Okay, I was trying to. I was trying to recall which ones were which. I had the sound sticks.
Yeah, the sound sticks with the subwoofer were they were made for any computer like in the world. It wasn't Apple specific. The Harman Kardon that I'm talking about, the the clear spheres with the
I remember those now.
Yeah, those were specific to the iMac G4. Like, you could only use it with the iMac G4 because it had a proprietary connector for audio and a FireWire connector for power.
So there was actually a company that made a device that they called the iFire that would let you plug in those speakers, and then the output could be run to a 3.5 millimeter standard audio jack, and I had that. I had those speakers and the iFire at one point.
Yeah, the iFire was made by Griffin. I was about a dozen years ago. I was very much considering getting that and the speakers. Just looking for those speakers on eBay. They were so expensive. I remember they sounded so good.
I actually need to see. I don't believe I still have those. I need to look. I think when I decided to get the sound sticks, I ended up getting rid of those speakers.
At this point, I feel like they'd almost be horribly mismatched with any of the current Apple aesthetic. I've not for the speakers, but for various reasons, I've considered purchasing an iMac G4, just because it was such a unique design. And the only reason I haven't is because I can't think of a good use for it. Like, I need to have a use for it. I can't just, I could just have it around, but there's other things I'd rather have. But it was a really cool computer.
And just to make sure we're thinking about the same device, that's the one that I always called Luxo, right? The one that looks a lot like the Pixar lamp. Yeah.
Yes. I've heard it called. Yeah, I think Luxo is one of the more endearing names for it, but I've heard it called the Igloo quite a lot. And I thought I was going to give you a list of things I heard it called, but I realized it's only the Igloo I've heard it called.
Yeah, that is one that I still wouldn't mind tracking down just to have as a display piece alongside that cube that I've got.
Yeah. They're usually on eBay for a few $100s, but I've been looking. I think they came in a 15, 17, and 20-inch variant, and I would like to get a 20-inch model, and a 20-inch model on eBay will be a few $100s. I think I have the service manual for that. I'm pretty sure I have the service manual for it, and I would probably pull it apart. And even though I've heard it's a beast to take apart, I'd pull it apart and put in a SSD at least.
Yeah, it's something I ought to finally do with that cube. I need to plug it back up and see if it even still boots.
Oh yeah, that would be cool. That'd be super cool.
It has not been powered on in at least a decade at this point.
I mean, as long as the capacitors inside are okay, which they probably are, it would probably boot, right?
I would assume so. I don't have any reason to boot it. The only reason I even got it was because of the phenomenal condition it was in. I just wasn't going to pass that up. But even at the time that I picked it up, I already had that my original titanium PowerBook, and so there was no reason for me to mess with the cube.
You got a super sweet deal, didn't you?
Yeah, that was a part of the combo deal. I got it and that Quicksilver Power Mac for right at $120.
Oh my god, that's crazy!
And the Quicksilver Power Mac is currently acting as a pseudo floor shelf. Like it, I have it sitting beside a bookcase with a basket sitting on top because it sits nicely in between the handles that has some extra audio cables and all in it. I was going to use it as an ottoman style type footrest in the office, but it's not the most conducive in that environment, and I have an ottoman that I wasn't using elsewhere anyway, so instead I have it as a display piece next to that bookcase.
The only thing I could think of that I could reasonably try to make work with an iMac G4 is, I think, have it run front row. I still have a couple of the old IR remotes that Apple made. I love those IR remotes. I think they were really clever for what they were at the time. And they were also a really cool tool for keynote presentations. But the iMac G4 will run Leopard. That's as far as it'll go, because Snow Leopard was the first one that was Intel only.
I still have one of those IR remotes somewhere.
I've got one that's still in the plastic. Like, it's never been taken out.
I might have two. So I know I have one that came with the 15-inch MacBook Pro that I bought back in 2010. I know that I have that one, but I think I still have the one from my original Apple TV as well.
Oh.
I do not still have my original Apple TV.
No, I was just thinking I forgot about the original Apple TV.
Yeah, that one was fun because you could jailbreak it eventually and put Plex on it. It didn't work real well. Like it was better served for, syncing from iTunes, which, God, sounds so antiquated now that you think about how you would get media onto that device.
Yeah. Not only does that sound antiquated, there is no iTunes. iTunes is gone.
Yeah, very true.
What's crazy, I've mentioned the use of putting micro SD cards in iPods. You can plug in an iPod into Catalina and it will be recognized. It still works. The Finder will sync things to it as the Finder syncs with iPods now.
Yeah, it really doesn't feel strange. I think that's part of why I keep forgetting that iTunes doesn't exist in the same, capacity, because it always seemed that the functionality fit better as a Finder utility than it did within iTunes.
iTunes got really, maybe we should, iTunes got really big and bloated, as they said, but I don't know, that never really so much bothered me, but it did, I feel like iTunes went away more because everything is streaming now. There's all the devices have Wi-Fi. Most of the devices, i.e. the iPhone, have cellular, and there's just no reason not, there was really no reason to keep iTunes around, especially since they moved all that functionality into the Finder, at least as far as for syncing things to an iPod, because they still sell iPods. They look like they have home buttons, so it just sort of fits, and I don't feel like anybody is shedding tears over the loss of iTunes.
I think it helps that they kept all of that interface looking pretty much identical, just moved into the Finder.
Yeah, and to be fair, it looked like the Finder in iTunes. It looked like the iTunes was doing Finder functionality, because you're right, it did feel like it belonged in Finder rather than in iTunes. I will say I was fairly annoyed when iPhone OS was updated and the iPod app went away, because originally you had the iPod app, which had music and videos and podcasts, I think, and then they split them all out into their own individual apps.
I don't remember that really being anything that bugged me. I think the iteration that bothered me a lot was when the TV app was introduced, and it was supposed to be the replacement for both the iTunes Store and your media consumption. And I still will launch the iTunes Store on the phone in a heartbeat if I'm looking for something instead of having to deal with the TV app.
Oh, I don't. I didn't even realize the iTunes. I guess it's not called iTunes Music Store now. Is it just Music? I don't know. I haven't looked at that in ages.
Well, let me take a look and I'll tell you for sure.
Yeah.
No, it still says iTunes Store.
Wow. I'm not even sure if I don't even know if I still have. Yeah, I don't even have that on my phone.
Yeah, anytime that I'm looking for a TV show and I want to decide, if it's something that I might want to purchase instead of checking different streaming services, then I always launch the iTunes Store and look for it there.
Interesting. iTunes was I iTunes was the first Apple application that really got me interested in Apple. I used it in OS 9 OS 9. For the first time I used it was in OS 9, and I remember setting up some brand new iMacs, and these were the G3. There were some of the later G3 models that had more muted colors, I think, like slate and sage, and ruby red's not too muted, but I remember setting up some iMacs that had iTunes, and this was at a time when iTunes gave you music. It came preloaded with some music, and it was the Rip Mix Burn days, and I remember making a playlist called Rip Mix Burn, and I still have that playlist in Apple Music from some music from an iMac from almost 20 years ago. And it was back in the day when they encouraged you to take music and burn it onto CDs. It was before the music store.
I think it's interesting. That could be a fairly interesting discussion that we might table for later, because the entire thing that brought me to the Mac was the original Final Cut Pro. And so it's kind of funny listening to iTunes being something that was interesting and driving some level of interest, where for me it was content creation, and the difference between Final Cut Pro and Adobe's Premiere was really the only alternative at the time.
Yeah, I think we should do early Mac origin stories.
Yeah, we'll table that. It sounds interesting, but I know after recent developments, I'm more interested in some of the notes that you have here on Big Sur, and I want to touch on the Apple Silicon as a follow-up to last week. So I don't know which one you might want to tackle first. Do you want to go through Big Sur first, since it's the easily available component?
Yeah, because I'm one quote-unquote compelling feature, also really just a feature I might like to have and we've taken this massive dive down a rabbit hole.
All right, so let's circle back to that. So the AirPod utility, or the ease of switching with the AirPods is one, and what's the next one?
I was just going to follow up and say that it doesn't solve a problem I have, but it does provide a solution that looks more interesting. The other two things that I find interesting, and I'm going to lump them in together, is Notification Center and Messages. Notification Center just looks a lot nicer. It's purely the look of it, but it gives you the widget style. It gives you widget style, I guess, widgets in the Notification Center instead of the sidebar, and it just looks like it would be easier to customize and adjust to my liking, rather than the current Notification Center. I don't use Notification Center that much, but I think it has a lot to do with the interface seems relatively boring to me. There's not a lot going on there for me. And then the other thing with Messages is just the unification, or I would call it the unification of Messages on macOS. A bunch of features that are missing from the Mac in Messages are now in Messages, like the different effects, the screen effects and so forth that can be done have been brought to Messages on the Mac. So basically, the feature set is the same on iOS as it is in the Mac. Again, those are not features that I'm not compelled to install Big Sur, because there are a lot of things about Big Sur that I don't like, but they do seem nice, and one day, I will install Big Sur. It would be kicking and screaming right now. But I will add I am gonna install Big Sur on my Mac Mini that's being used as a server, so that I can hopefully get Time Machine backups going again, because they were abysmal on Catalina and any OS that supported APFS.
So messages, I certainly agree with. There are a number of times after having run the developer beta for a short period that I find myself missing one of the features and messages that I have available to me in iOS. And really, the main thing that I like is the ability to pin messages. Like that alone is something that I just find myself missing on the Mac in Catalina. Is that enough for me to upgrade? No, certainly not at the moment. There are too many other things that I depend on that I have to make sure work first. But I did actually take the time to partition the drive on my MacBook Pro, my primary machine, and installed the Big Sur beta on a partition alongside Catalina so that I can dual boot. And important to note, if anybody wants to try it, you must partition. You cannot just create another APFS volume because of some technical issues where Catalina will no longer be able to update itself if you go that route. So do not just create a new APFS volume and think you're good. You must actually partition and separate the two OSs. That said, now that Big Sur is out, I need to install the actual released version of Big Sur on that partition, and then see of the stuff that I use regularly, what works in emulation, and what just doesn't work, and get a good feel for kind of what state everything is in. I probably won't do it this weekend. I might get to it, but it's definitely on the list for within the next week to 2 weeks to at least get that set up and see, all right, can I make the move, even if I'm not going to yet, just to kind of know what state everything's in.
You know, it's interesting because I don't think I have any software that isn't supported or at least will run well in Big Sur, but I don't want to. I don't want to get it.
You know, the only thing that really just irks me are the notifications in Big Sur. Like everything else I'm okay with.
Oh, yeah.
But those notifications just look so horrifically shit ugly that I don't want to upgrade just because of them. And that's strange. I mean, a company typically known for its pleasing aesthetics just got that really horribly wrong this go around.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. My main reason for not updating are aesthetics as well. I love the new icon sets that they are using. I hate the spacing that they're using. The spacing indicates that they're gonna bring touch to the Mac. They say, I mean, even like this week or last week, they say they're not bringing touch to the Mac. It's not something they're pursuing. But you know, they're known for saying they're not doing a thing until they announce the thing. I very much remember Steve Jobs saying, "We will never put iPod on a video on an iPod," and then like a few months later, there's the iPod video, and how great it was. But the spacing just drives me crazy. I like a compact UI. I don't like how much space they put there. It does make sense for touch.
Yeah, I mean, nothing that you state is anything that I disagree with. I think the big thing is that the spacing that I noticed that bothered me a bit was up in the menu bar as far as the icons up to the top right and what I would call the system tray. But I typically hide most of those with the bartender app utility. So it didn't bother me so much to have the 4 or 5 that I typically have visible just be spaced a bit further. And I think that's the only reason that doesn't get on my nerves. Because if I left everything typically available up there visible, it would kill me. So I get the concern. But I think because I hide them anyway, just because I am a big fan of not having much of anything visible unless that's absolutely necessary in the first place. And so at any given time to have even 3 or 4 icons, up there in the top right or on the desktop bothers me. I want it nice and clean just across the board. And if it weren't for that particular trait, I think that would be another feature or another component of the UI that would certainly keep me from wanting to upgrade.
I have problems with the menu bar in Big Sur. They tried to make the menu bar translucent and leopard. It did not go well. They added a checkbox so that you could make it completely opaque again. The translucent menu bar in leopard was not too bad in my opinion. The one in Big Sur is pretty bad. And it's not even the translucency that's the problem for me. When I ran the public beta, I had a major problem with transitioning to desktops. I usually have a few virtual desktops that I switch between, and I have different backgrounds just to organize spaces, applications in these spaces in my mind. I use different backgrounds, and if you went from a light to dark background, the menu bar text went from black to white, and the transition between those spaces and the menu bar changing from dark to light or light to dark was really jarring. I think a lot of people probably wouldn't care, but I hated that.
I didn't notice that. I know, so this is certainly a topic that I've heard repeatedly in a few different arenas, and so I'm aware of it. I think I didn't notice it because I run exclusively in dark mode, and all of my backgrounds are dark so that the text always is white. And I think it's just because I don't have anything that has a light background where I ever saw that transition, that it just, it wasn't something I was going to encounter as a result. And so it never was something that I thought was an issue. Because for me, with the text always being white and me not having anything that is even borderline, white or gray or light in general at the top of the screen, I just never saw an issue with the translucency or the text being difficult to read, but I can see how it could be.
So it wasn't even the being able to read it was never the problem. It was just the switching. It was like you would if I went from a light to a dark background, you'd move over, you'd see the dark background, and then it would be like noticeable amount of time, maybe a second or so, before it switched from black text to white text. And I was just like, really hated that.
Why are you even using light backgrounds? I mean, come on.
I use the dynamic backgrounds that come with the OS.
See, that's the problem. I don't use any of those.
I like them. I think they're fun. I used to use my own backgrounds for a long time, and then I was just like, I'm just going to use the default background. It's a good picture. It's a much better picture. Even if I go look for good pictures, that's a really good picture. Especially since they've been on the theme of doing locations in California. It's a nice nature picture. I like the pictures that they have, and so I feel kind of like really good about being a stock OS picture user now, or wallpaper stock OS wallpaper.
Yeah, so I'll agree that they have really good looking wallpapers. I have not used any of their wallpapers in probably a good 5 years.
See, 5 years ago, I was using my own wallpapers, and now I would switch to this. I always loved going to simple desktops and getting the whatever OS wallpaper was, whatever the current OS was, their main wallpaper that you'd see on like all of the products and marketing and so forth, and get the pixelated version of that wallpaper. Always had fun with that. But you talk about dark mode, and this is, I used when dark mode first came out, I used dark mode a lot, exclusively, and then I got to where I was missing the classic Mac OS 10 look, and so I switched to auto. And so most of the time when I'm using the computer at work, it would be in the light color, and it sort of drives me crazy because I use auto on my phone, and my phone I feel like in iOS it does a good job of switching to dark at night, and I like that. And it's awful in Mac OS. Like as we were sitting here, like as we sit here and record, until I just switched it over to dark, just because I wanted to look at dark again. It was light, and it's 10:20 at night. And sometimes I'll wake up in the morning, it'll be in dark mode for like 30 minutes before it switches over to light, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and I don't know why.
I think this is hilarious because I refuse to use dark mode on the phone. I think it looks like shit.
Interesting.
I tried it. I used dark mode for a long time when it was first released, and I finally just said, no, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right. I can't deal with it anymore. I changed it back to light, and I haven't touched it since.
That's really interesting.
But on the Mac, I use dark mode exclusively, and so it is kind of funny to hear the differences in just general preferences.
I like the way it switches on in iOS because I feel like I get a different feel. I feel like it sort of helps me separate work and not work, like just the visual cue. It's funny though. I got reprimanded for using light mode, and I was like, why are you using light mode? I was like, fuck you, it's my phone.
Should I even ask who reprimanded you?
Oh, it was a friend of mine that I played trivia with. I can't remember exactly which one it was. I'd sent a screenshot to a group of friends, and they were like, who uses light mode anymore? And I was just like, yeah.
So you can let them know that I use it exclusively because dark mode on the phone is horrible. Dark mode on the Mac looks good. Just trust me. Set it to light mode on the phone, dark mode on the Mac. Your life will be better.
See, I don't have a problem with dark mode on the phone, but I enjoy light mode when it is light mode. So I like both, and I'm okay with dark mode because I do use the phone a lot in light mode. I wish the same thing would happen for my Mac. I wish it would switch as reliably it does for iOS. It does not. So sometimes I'll just manually put it into dark mode.
I do wonder if that has been addressed a bit with the final release of Big Sur, since I don't know what has been tweaked or anything, since I haven't actually booted into Big Sur other than making sure that my dual OS setup actually worked. So I didn't spend any time even configuring anything.
I will say if they fix that, that'll be great. It's not going to make me want to upgrade, but great, they fixed it. They didn't, I would like a compact mode.
Yeah, that I will not argue with you on at all. What is this oops that I see in the notes?
I broke my phone.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. in a pretty dumb way.
Did you get it fixed?
No, I'm not gonna fix it right now. The reason, actually, the only reason I put that in there is because I'm really impressed with how well this glass has stood up. I said, was it a couple of weeks ago, I had dropped my phone and I flung it out of the front seat of my truck, and it hit the running board and then hit the concrete, and I was like, I can't even tell that it fell down, because I thought maybe I would have cracked it, like, some minor cracks. Well, I took my kids camping this weekend, and through the course of events, I was unloading my truck, and I set my phone on the top of my truck, behind the trunk area, the cargo area. And when I say truck, I mean SUV. For listeners, I mean SUV, but it's on a truck frame, so I call it a truck. I forgot about my phone up there, and I drove off, and it did not fall onto the ground. It got wedged in between the space of the trunk, the back door of the trunk, and the body of the vehicle. And at some point, I opened it and closed it with it in that space. And I remember hearing like a weird sound, but I was like, that was a weird sound. And then found my phone, and I was like, oh no. There are just tiny spider cracks. There's like this tiny crack right above the cellular signal and Wi-Fi signal. It's the tiniest little thing, and it spiders out way down in the screen. Probably about the longest one out goes from the top right to the middle left of the glass. And when I'm using the phone, those cracks are almost not noticeable. Every once in a while, I'll see the light refracting off of the crack just a little bit in one location. And I'm just so surprised that the glass held up the way that it did.
I'm having a hard time visualizing, like, the way you describe it. Is it like when you close the cargo area and the hinge portion of the door, was it like the corner of it was wedged in there? Is that?
So it fell. So I'm not exactly sure. I know I set it. So I set my phone. You set your phone down. When I set my phone down somewhere, I set it on the back so that it's camera side down, screen side up. And I set it like that on the top of my vehicle, long ways. So when I say long ways, the length of the long edge of the phone was parallel to the width of the vehicle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm following so far.
And this is where I don't know. I don't remember if I opened the trunk and then it got wedged in there that way, or if I drove and then it slid in there. What I think happened is, like, after I think this is going to contradict what I just said, and I think I'm initially misremembered it. But what I think happened was, I set it on the trunk, then I opened the trunk, and then it slid down into the space as I opened it. And then I closed it, and that's when I heard a weird noise. So I closed the trunk on my phone, drove to park my vehicle, and then as I was leaving, noticed it sticking up out of the space between the trunk door and the rest of the vehicle.
Okay, that I can at least semi-visualize it from that.
So it was laying flat on my vehicle, and I noticed it because it was sticking up in that crack.
The way you described that, I would say I'm impressed that it held up that well.
I would have thought that the glass would be like shattered significantly. Like it's totally usable. It's worth keeping this way and waiting to see if a manufacturer defect pops up that's not related to the screen.
And the back didn't shatter or anything as well?
No, the back is completely fine.
Wow.
Like the back doesn't even have a scratch on it.
I'd say that alone is impressive, since the front is the only one that got the quote unquote ceramic shield new. I don't know if it's a coating or a technology or what, but the back is theoretically just glass.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they did a lot to that front glass. Or that front glass is significantly stronger than any front glass they've ever used. I kind of had this thing, like if they replace the glass, I'm not confident it's going to have its proper water resistance anymore. Just from experience, I had a phone display replaced, and after that, I had a water issue, and it never exceeded the rating that they do. And Apple Retail being Apple Retail, well, it's got liquid damage. So
Yeah, I have my issues with that as an answer as well.
yeah, I'm waiting for, I kind of want to wait for like a thing that would cause me to replace my whole phone, and maybe I'll get a thing. Maybe I'll have a manufacturer defect that will prevent me from having to pay for it at all.
I would say one can hope, but if there is a defect, it's likely to affect mine. I don't know that I want to hope for that as
well. Yeah. I don't foresee that happening.
I would, just given that you've already had a couple of incidents, I would say you're probably more likely to end up dropping it again and actually causing enough damage to decide to replace it.
Yeah. So I'm okay waiting. It's really not that bad. I feel like I've broken more phones since I've not worked at Apple and started using Apple Care Plus. And I'm wondering if there's just like some sort of subconscious, like I have Apple Care Plus, and I was like, no, that still costs you money. It doesn't cost you as much money, but it still costs money. I don't like that. So some of them were like, or a lot of it, honestly, a lot of it has been like the things I do in life are very different over the past 4 years than they used to be. And I think it's more the more active lifestyle that I live that is why I'm breaking more phones.
Yeah, I would probably agree. Like, even though I have been more active over the past year than I have the previous couple of years, it's been still confined to the house because of the world as it is. And so I'm not doing things where my phone is being transported to different locations, or like it's sitting on a desk or a table, and I am being more active personally, but that doesn't mean that the phone is in any more or less danger than it has been, just working a desk job and going back and forth between work and home. I guess for lack of better phrasing, the risk of anything happening to my phone hasn't changed, even though my activity level has increased. My activity level has increased only because I've intentionally made it increase. We're actually going places and doing things less over the past year and a half. That's probably not accurate. It's probably been since my son was born that we just have not been as active, because if we go for a hike, he might make it a mile, and that's pretty much it. We're not at that age bracket where we're really going out and doing things, because he just doesn't make it that far. We're getting there, but we're not there yet. And so you go back to before he was born, when we were going hiking and doing different things that were far more active and being out and about. Like, my activity level now exceeds my activity level then, but it's confined to a couple of thousand square feet.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking, it's like, 4 years ago, Luke is the age Jacob is now. And so that was when I first started taking him camping, and also, so like my activities went up. I started buying Apple Care Plus, but also phones got bigger. 4 years ago, I went from an iPhone 5S to an iPhone 7. That's a little bit bigger phone. And I think the biggest, and I was just thinking about this, I think the biggest reason I've started breaking phones more, because prior to that, I had not broken a phone. I went from an iPhone 3G to a 3GS to a 4 to a 5 to a 5S and never broke any of those. And I think the biggest thing is that I stopped using a belt clip. I use a case that you'd clip onto your belt because the phones were small enough to fit there. And I used that exclusively at work because I didn't want to have my phone in my pocket at work, because we were, moving from behind the bar to the GR was I felt like I was moving around a lot, and I just felt more comfortable within a case. But with the iPhone 7, I went from a job where I was moving around a lot like that to a desk job, and felt fine keeping it in my pocket. Plus, it was a bigger phone. I didn't want to have that size case on my belt. I just couldn't do it. It's like I won't, it would feel too much like I needed to put black socks on and sandals, like brown leather sandals and black socks.
And I think the better comparison would be something like black socks and white Crocs.
Oh man.
I do follow, though, because I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No. I was just gonna have an aside about Crocs, but go ahead.
Okay. I was thinking about it as you were talking. So I had the original iPhone. I went from that to the 3GS, and then I had the 4, 4S, 5, 5S. I pretty much had every iteration since then. I'm pretty sure there was one other one that I skipped, and I just don't remember which one. And I've used cases very sparingly here and there. I absolutely destroyed my original iPhone, the very first one. I was hiking down the Riverwalk in Columbus, Georgia, and somehow or another, just the phone slipped out of my hand and tumbled and down steps, all concrete. Just it shattered. It was dead.
That hurts. That hurts.
The nice thing is work paid to replace it because work paid for the original phone. So it didn't bother me too much.
That was a new phone. That was like you had to, the replacement was you pay for a new phone.
Yeah, it was, they bought another one outright. It was nice that they did. I did not expect it. It just happened to be a perk of that particular job. But the next one that I dropped was the 4 or the 4S. I don't remember which. I think it was the 4. And that was the one that tumbled down 3 or 4 concrete steps, and there was just a little chip on the edge of the glass. Like, it was practically no damage. I knew it was there, but nobody else would know unless they were looking for it. And then I didn't have anything else break until I went to... What was the first Max phone? Was that the 8?
6 the Max or the Plus?
I think it was the 6 Plus. That was the first time they did a difference in the camera system between the two, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
6 Plus.
So the 6 Plus is the only large version of the iPhone that I tried, and I dropped that thing all the time, just constantly. And so the increased size definitely plays a role. That said, the general size of the 12 Pro I find to be comfortable, much like I did pretty much every iteration since the 10. To go from 10 to 10S to 11 Pro to 12 Pro, all of those have felt like the right size in general for me, and I haven't dropped any of those yet. I'm pretty sure now that I'm talking about it, I'll probably sling my 12 Pro across the driveway sometime in the next week or two. But in general, that size phone seems to fit my hand really well. And I know that I have long fingers. And so part of it, I think, is just that that's the right size for me. And that's part of why I didn't drop most of the previous phones, because they were relatively small for me and or very easily grasped, I guess is another way to put it. That said, with the 4 and with the 6, I think, might have been the 5S, but definitely with the 4, I used the book case for a long time from 12 South. And I enjoyed it. I liked the feel of it, but I found that it was cumbersome because you would have to fold the case back to use it, as a phone. And I know that they've done some design things to address that so that you can just pull a shell out and use it in general and everything else. Like, they're nothing against them. The first iteration of the book just looked great. It was, phenomenal case, no issues. But I felt like I dropped it in that case more often than I dropped it without a case. Granted, case protected it. I never had an issue with it being dropped in that case. But I think that just leads a little bit further credence to the rough size of the current phone just fits my hand well. I think if I were to go to a larger phone, I would drop it all the time, a lot like I did that 6 Plus. And a smaller phone, I probably would also not drop just because it's easily grippable. But I think the flat edges make a huge difference there as well, because I always felt like I would be more likely to drop the 10, the rounded edge phones than I do this one. But I don't have a good way to know what that actually translates to into practice, because I'm not carrying it out and about everywhere like I would, a year ago. And so it's just kind of interesting to think about how changes in lifestyle in 2020 might be the primary attributing factor to why I haven't dropped a phone in a while.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. And I was just going to say, take your kid camping, break your phone more.
I want to. I'm ready to. I have.
I know.
I have a tent set up and ready, and it's even more compelling because Emily has never been camping, and she agreed to go, but that was pre-Jacob as well. Problem is, she agreed to go, and so I'm going to hold her to it, regardless of whether it was, years ago or now. The big thing that I have to do, like the piece that is on me to find, is a place that is a relatively secluded campsite, so that first experience is not, a compressed campground like you would find in most parks that would ruin the experience first time out.
Yeah. You're going to be almost hard-pressed to find that right now. Trying to find a campsite in the world of the pandemic is really hard. We should actually do a camping episode. I would love to talk about camping. But I was going to say, this past weekend, I'll say Birmingham is quite a cool city if you think about how from downtown Birmingham, you can go from downtown Birmingham, where there are like 4 tall buildings, travel south about half an hour and be in a backcountry camping site in a fairly large state park. I feel like that's fairly unique. And this past Saturday, a friend of mine and I were going to take our kids camping. We're going to go to Oak Mountain, use one of their backcountry camp sites. They have 4. And they have it set up so that you can reserve day of. You can't like reserve a week out or anything like that. So we went to, my friend Ellery got there as soon as the office opened, which is what we have done every time. which guarantees us a spot. He goes and there's not a spot. Somebody had reserved it the day before for 2 nights, so that was fairly unlucky. There were only 2 front country tent sites left in the whole park. The guy who was working there, he said, I've been here for 5 years. I have never seen it this busy. And we ended up not camping at Oak Mountain at all because they had a 2-night minimum, which is new. And it was going to be $100 for us to camp. I was like, no way. We called an audible, went down to Cheehaw Wilderness where there are way fewer rules. And we found a site, and it was somewhere in between. It had a backcountry feel, but with many front country conveniences. So at this point, I would say that's probably going to be your best bet if you decide to camp before the pandemic's over.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly where it was. I think it's about a 45-minute drive or so northeast. But I saw there was a campground or a campsite that was maintained by the Army Corps of Engineers that is technically backcountry camping in the sense that there are no real amenities. I'll look it up. That'll be something we'll do an episode focused on that, because the main thing that I'm looking for is something where I can drive most of the way in. There can be a short hike, but again, Jacob doesn't make it very far, and I can't rely on having to hike into a site. So it's got to be more front country facing as far as what you would expect being able to get to the site. But what I want is the more backcountry feel of I can at least not hear people 20 feet away,
That is how my weekend was. We went to Camp Turnip Seed in Cheehaw Wilderness, and the campsite was full. Like it baffled me because my buddy and I stopped there overnight. When we did a 18-mile loop, and it's about halfway through that loop, and we stopped there back in April of 2019, and there was nobody there. Absolutely, we had the entire campground to ourselves. And this past weekend, when we got there was one site left, and it was a tiny site, and we ended up just walking maybe 200-300 few hundred yards down the trail, and we found this gorgeous massive campsite. It was 5 dads and 9 kids, and we had lots of space. It never felt like we had any issues with social distancing, and we had a lovely time, and it had all of the backcountry feel with only walking a few hundred yards.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm looking for. So we'll maybe that'll be next week's episode. I don't know if we'll have anything else that feels pressing to talk about, but it feels like that would be a timely one, just because we're either going to get to ridiculously cold temperatures that nobody wants to camp in shortly, or that might be something that we try to do in a week or so. And so either way, it's certainly worth discussing, even if it's not something that happens until spring next year.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a fairly mild winter. I know there will be days where it's quite cold, and that is not the time to take a first-time camper who is not reluctant, but maybe apprehensive about camping, or maybe not even apprehensive, but just like wouldn't do it on their own. So you want to. This last weekend was like pretty much perfect because it was warm during the day and just cool enough at night to have a really good campfire going. At one point, I stepped away from the campfire and I changed from shorts to pants, and I went and sat down next to the fire, and I was like, no, it's too warm. I'll go put my shorts back on. So it was a lovely night. It was a lovely weekend.
Yeah, we'll add that episode. We'll talk a bit about camping gear and everything else as well, because I have a lot of stuff from when I used to camp, and I've been itching to use it again.
Oh, the world has changed. That'll be a fun conversation. I was going to say, because you mentioned black socks and white Crocs. Crocs have a little strap on them, and you know you can flip it around to the front, and you see so that you can use the Crocs like slides, or clogs, whatever you slide your foot in. There's nothing there to block you. But if you flip it back and have that strap in the back, it has a specific name. Have you heard this?
I have not.
It is in sport mode.
That's got to be the most ridiculous thing that I've heard.
Officially from Crocs, it is in sport mode, and I feel like that is like perfect. I mean, there's all sorts of jokes are made about how you wear, if a man wears Crocs, he's not gonna have any children whatsoever. You don't get laid if you wear Crocs. To throw on a sport mode just makes it that much better. I applaud Crocs for that.
They've certainly embraced it. I mean, I've never owned a pair. I've never desired to own a pair. I will never own a pair, as far as I can tell at this point. Maybe I hit 60 and decide that I want to wear them. But like my preferred footwear, if it's warm out, I want just a basic pair of flip-flops. I have multiple pairs from multiple different places, but the most comfortable, the ones that I go to 90% of the time, are made by Reef. And part of why I love them is because of the bottle opener built into the bottom. But they're also ridiculously comfortable, and I don't feel like they slide on my feet the way a lot of flip-flops do. I mean, certainly I could kick them off if I tried, but I feel like I don't have to try to grip them to my feet either, like I have to do with some other brands. And so that is my preferred like summer footwear. And then if it's cooler but not necessarily cold yet, I'll typically go with I have two different pair of kind of slipper styled shoes. One are actually the Mack Weldon slippers. I'm sure you've heard about them from like Gruber and other ads. That are what you would think of as a typical house shoe with just a little lip on the back. And then I also have a pair of Allbirds, the lace-up wool version. And I bought those prior to our Europe trip because I could easily pack them as flat as possible and then be comfortable. So I have both of those that are easy to wear. And then a pair of Zero shoes, Xero, that are practically minimal as far as the sole goes, but those I wear with socks, and so that's when it gets just a little bit cooler. And then I have a pair of Uggs with Ugg slippers with the lamb's wool lining for when it's really cold and I don't want to put on real shoes.
I love a shoe like that. I didn't realize that you wore Reef sandals. I wore Reef sandals for a good 20 years, and and in that 20-year period, there's probably a good decade that like flip-flops were like my primary shoe. Like I would wear tennis shoes like for tennis shoe related things, but otherwise I was wearing flip-flops. And I went through a lot of pair of Reef. Like I would wear them out. Like either to the point, like they're well-made flip-flops, and I'd wear them out to the point where the sole wore out and caused the strap to come loose because there wasn't enough sole left, or the strap would break. And I only switched to a different pair of flip-flops because I just wanted to try something new out, and I switched over to a pair of flip flops made by Chaco, and that was 2 years ago. I'm going on almost 2.5 years with these flip flops, and I wear them quite a lot. I think I don't think they'll make it another year though. This is related to the Crocs because I have a friend that I paddle with, day trips and kayak camping trips, and he swears by Crocs. That's all. I think that's all I've ever seen him wear. I'm not sure that I've ever seen him in a tennis shoe or anything. But most of the time, I either see him at his house or paddling. It's interesting. Anyway, the reason he loves Crocs is because it's a water shoe, and it's completely water resistant. He feels like he's got good grip in the water, and he's got good grip with his foot in the shoe in the water. On top of that, they're really easy to get rocks and silt out of your shoe, because like a riverbed, you're going to get rocks and silt in your shoes. It's a little bit harder with Chaco sandals, and that's my choice of footwear for paddling. I have I can't remember the model. It's the typical Chaco with a single strap that also goes around the big toe. I always get the big toe strap, and by always, I'm still on my first pair of Chaco sandals. I bought these in August of 2007, and I had them restrapped in autumn of 2018. So I got 11 years on the first go, and then I paid, I think it was like $30 or $40 to have them restrapped when the strap broke. And so they're still going strong, and that's why I had this for 11 years before I had any problems with it, and that's why I decided to try out the Chaco flip flops.
I know everybody that I know that has them certainly loves them and swears by them. I think it was 3 years ago I picked up a pair of Sperry flip-flops, and I can't tell that they've aged at all, but they're pretty comfortable as well.
The Chaco sandal is a tricky thing because there were a number of years where I did not wear them, just because I felt like they were like I couldn't get the strap right. Like either the one around my big toe would be too tight, or somewhere else would be too tight. It was kind of a thing. But since 2005, I've been wearing them pretty solidly, and I've sort of figured it out. And the straps, I got the straps dialed in exactly where I want them, and I just have to use the strap with the slider, I don't know if it's a slider or I'm not sure. I'm sure the piece of plastic that you can use to cinch and uncinch the one strap that you need to move has a name, but I don't know what it's called. But I've gotten to where like I keep that uncinched most of the time, and I just slide my foot in, and I can walk around, and I got no problems. And I cinch it tight in conditions, i.e. put it in sport mode, and use it, continue on with what I'm doing. But I liked them because I feel like the idea of the Chaco sandal is like, hey, let's take a hiking boot and turn it into a sandal. They're really heavy, but it's great. I think it's great for walking around in the rivers and so forth. And I also am able to wear socks with it. Like I've taken it on some camping trips, and it'd be cold in the morning, and I'll have wool socks on. I just don't stick my toe through the toe loop when I have socks on. And I will probably have to buy a new pair of those sandals if I lose them, But thus far, it hasn't been a problem. Other good thing about them is they float.
Yeah, I can see that being beneficial, especially with as much time as you spend on the water. I do think it's kind of hilarious that we spent any amount of time talking about footwear, because honestly, 95+% of the past year, I've just been barefoot.
Oh, wow. I walk around my house with my sandals on, or my flip-flops on.
Yeah, no, since March, I put on shoes to take Jacob to daycare, and then as soon as I get home, the shoes come off, and then I put them back on to go pick him up.
As it's gotten a little bit cooler, I've whipped out I have some LL Bean moccasin house shoes, and I was gonna say that would be comparable to your UGG shoes, and they're just nice and warm. I'm looking at them because I've been switching. They're sitting under my desk, and I've been switching. But through the days, I've been switching between flip flops and these slippers.
Yeah, I mean, my Uggs stay beside the door so that when it's cooler, like it is now, I can slip them on real quick if I have to go grab the mail or something. But literally every other moment, I'm just barefoot. I haven't worn socks in 6 months.
Gosh.
Well, and it's because all the shoes I have shoes available that I don't have to wear socks with. Like the only time I slip on socks is if I go for a run or something, because I've got a pair of Merrells that I wear that are minimal as far as the sole goes, but they're full shoes. And those I wear with socks. I tried wearing them without socks, and I can do so like walking around or going to the office or something. But running in them, there's one spot on my foot that it'll rub raw. And but if I wear socks, it's not an issue. And so if I decide to do, I call it a run. It's a jog at best. But if I decide to do a run, then I'll slip socks on and put those on. But I mean, I'm not a runner. I don't like to run. I can't stand it. So typically speaking, I'm not doing that either. It's just like my workouts are barefoot, and my day-to-day walking around, working from home, I'm barefoot. Unless it has dropped below about 40 degrees outside, I'm barefoot. So it's literally just going to pick up Jacob and coming home that I'm slipping on shoes.
Those Merrell shoes that you have, those minimal Merrell, that's not the Vapor Glove, is it?
It is.
I have a pair of Vapor Gloves too.
Yeah, I like those a lot for when I do decide to jog.
I use them as just initially I got them thinking, oh, this would be a good camp shoe, and I have never taken them camping. I thought it'd be like, you go on a long hiking trip. They're super light. You don't want to wear your hiking boots once you get to camp. You want to slip on something a little bit nicer, but you don't want to be walking around barefoot or whatever. And I thought that's what I would get them for, but it turns out that I really like them as I like the aesthetic of those shoes with most of the pants that I wear. So I wear them as a street shoe from time to time. And I never wear them barefoot. I actually wear them with my favorite socks. My favorite socks fit them perfectly. And you talk about a good pair of socks. The Icebreaker no-show socks are brilliant. They are the most comfortable socks I've ever worn. And they are the best no-show socks I have ever worn. They have never slipped off of my heel while wearing them. And I've worn them in multiple pairs of shoes. They are the best socks I've ever had.
I have not tried their socks. I do have a handful of Icebreaker shirts, which we can have a whole discussion on the different shirts available. I think we probably should.
Yeah.
But the one piece that I'll interject is that whatever it is that Icebreaker does to their wool blend, it feels hand and foot above any of the competition.
Oh, I if I could have icebreaker shirts for everything, I would. I gotta say, icebreaker underwear is some of the best stuff I've ever worn. I have a couple of pair of briefs that I use for hiking, and it's just as good as the shirts feel for wearing a shirt. The underwear and the socks are just as good, if not better. It's just, I don't know, they got it right, and it's one of my favorite items of clothing.
All right, it's official. We're gonna have to have a single show dedicated to clothing because, I have two different pair of icebreaker underwear as well, and I have a slew of things from other manufacturers, and I have my preferences and thoughts and everything around different activities and how things performed, like with the packing light for the Europe trip and everything else. And there's a lot there. Like, that's easily a couple-hour conversation. So we will dedicate an episode to clothing and activities and things in general related to.
I feel like a lot of some of the things I have to say about Icebreaker could be included with the camp show, or it could be an extension of the camp show. But that being said, there's one more topic in the list that it just says Mac Mini, and tell me about the Mac Mini.
So I mentioned last week that I didn't think it would be fiscally responsible to purchase an M1 based Mini after having just replaced mine. Uh-huh. And then I decided to change my outlook on that after a number of different things surfaced on general performance and kind of how it would compare, and finding out that it would only cost me about $125 difference to get rid of this base model Intel Mac Mini and replace it with a Apple Silicon Mac Mini, which coincidentally should arrive tomorrow.
I think that was a solid decision.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the differences. So most of the reason why I'm excited to see the difference is because I don't actually use my Mac Mini for much of anything. Like, you could put easily an old, 2010 Mac Mini in its place, and it would handle everything that I do with it without a problem. But because my old Mac Mini died and I had to replace it eventually, I did so, 2, 3, 4 months ago, earlier this year. Time's irrelevant. It was sometime in 2020 that I replaced it. And after looking closer at the theoretical performance people are getting with the M1, it's like, it blows this away. And if I can spend just a little bit more and replace it and have something with that drastic an increase in performance for what little bit I do, I shouldn't have to replace this Mini for a decade.
Yeah.
So it's mostly a matter of, all right, that gives me a current Apple Silicon chip in a desktop to try, because there's the whole intrigue factor that I'm curious about. But really, the driving factor was I could add an extra 100 to what I'm already out of pocket, 150 maybe, just depending on the luck of selling it, third party. And it kind of made sense. So I went ahead and ordered the Mini because I wasn't entirely sure whether times had slipped, and they had not, or hadn't by much. A day or two? I think a handful of people have gotten their shipments as we record today. I get mine tomorrow, and so it'll give me a chance to benchmark them. If I decide that it really isn't as impressive as everything leads me to believe it is, I have the ability to return it through the extended holiday return window anyway, and so it's just kind of a no-brainer.
That was clever.
Yeah, I mean, I basically get 60 days ish to
Yeah.
sell the Intel Mini. I already have 2 people that have proclaimed interest that would literally have me net at $100 out of pocket, and I think that's well worth it.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I totally agree with that.
Especially since all I did was get the absolute base model Mini anyway in the Intel lineup, because I just didn't need it to do anything but be a headless server to run, a couple of Docker containers and call it a day. So I could do that with a Raspberry Pi. Like, it's not like I need the compute power. It's just that this allows me to also let it handle any ripping or encoding capabilities that I want to offload instead of having my primary machine tied up. And for that, I just don't see where the M1 isn't going to be drastically superior.
That is that's clever, and you got my wheels turning.
I'm certainly hoping it turns out that way. We'll find out. Even though it's scheduled to arrive tomorrow, the likelihood of me actually being able to get to getting it set up and transferring things and doing a couple of benchmarks and comparisons, I might make that happen before our next episode, but I kind of doubt it. I'm kind of pressed for time this week with other stuff in general. But if I'm just using it and transferring stuff over and I notice that it's more responsive and snappy and doesn't pause on network-related transfers, this one does, that alone is going to make it worth it, because that little bit of a delay trying to do more than one transfer over the network at a time just kills me, because it should be more than capable of doing so.
Yeah. That's pretty cool, man. Will you edit one of our episodes on that and see how well that goes?
Maybe. So where
Is it worth doing?
I think it would be worth doing. I think the big thing is just the fact that I have it set up in a headless environment now, and I don't have an easy way to have a workspace that's conducive to sitting for more than 5 or 10 minutes where it currently sits. It would depend on whether I set it up like on the desk and let it run there in parallel to this one and try editing on it or not. I think it depends on how quick I actually put it in place of the other Mini. But I also don't really know that I would see much of a difference in editing audio, because I already don't have any delays doing that off of my laptop. Where I think I might see an increase in performance is on the video encoding and decoding. And since we're not doing video, I don't know that I would notice any kind of difference there.
Yeah, well, you gotta rip a movie and see how that goes.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't even know if the utilities they use are ARM compatible or if it's going to be running in emulation mode. Like I think it would be hilarious if I have to run in emulation mode and it's still faster.
Yeah, which is a thing.
Yeah, I know I sent you a link. I will add it to the show notes for Renee Ritchie's YouTube video about benchmarks of the M1 Max. It's just ridiculous. In general, comparing we'll call it the bottom tier of the Mac lineup from a price perspective, performance-wise, it's on par with the upper tier for most tasks. And I think that anything that I would throw at it, as far as what I would use the Mini for now, it's just going to be clear above anything else that I currently have in the house that it would perform well. And I'm not entirely sure that my MacBook Pro would outperform it. It's an i7 with 32 gigs of RAM, and I think the only reason it may outperform something as if it were reliant on the discrete GPU or reliant on having more of something loaded into that RAM space. I think that's the only reason it might have an edge. Like I fully expect the Mini to outperform my MacBook Pro.
Yeah, I would expect that too.
And that's just going to make me that much more interested in Wave 2.
Yeah, that was a thing. And it made me think. I watched that Rene Ritchie video that you with the benchmark, and it made me think about the original MacBook Air and the 2011 MacBook Air. Like the original MacBook Air was sort of a niche product if you wanted the smallest computer, because it was tiny. And then in 2011, the MacBook Air got a slightly different wedge shape. They made the ports a little more, instead of it being that little drop down door, you got actual ports. You got your ports on the side, and the biggest thing, they added an 11-inch model, but the biggest thing was the hard drive. They put that SSD in there, and that was amazing. Like it completely changed the MacBook Air. It went, and I think they also dropped the price. I think the price, because or at least from the original model started around $1,800, and then the first at least the 13-inch MacBook Airs from 2011 were about $1,300, and that hard drive changed the game for MacBook Airs. It made the MacBook Air one of the best-selling computers Apple ever had, and it was because it was fast, it was responsive, and it was thin and light, and it went on to be a great machine. And if that sort of pattern is going to be repeated with the computers with SoC, we're in for major computing. I don't even know what the word is. It's just everything's going to get really fast, and there's going to be so much more that you can do on your computer.
Yeah, it's tough to even say advancement works there, because it's far beyond that. Like it really, without having hands-on time and being able to actually see it firsthand, just everything that we've heard and seen so far makes it feel like it's a whole new era of what is possible when it comes to responsiveness and performance. And we're going to basically be able to ignore all of the tech specs. It's all going to be a matter of, well, how much storage do you need? And that sort of like the conversation is around the phones. We kind of talked about that. Like I don't care how fast the CPU is on the phone or how much RAM I have. I just need to know how much storage space I need to worry about, because it handles everything else well. And I think we're at the cusp of that era in bringing that to personal computing. And that's exciting.
Yeah, I think new era that's the right term. So it is exciting.
And I really can't wait to see what they do with like the top of the line 15. Well, I guess now it's 16-inch Pro. Like that would be the replacement for me, because as much as I do like the appeal of the small, lightweight machine, because I have become so accustomed to just having that one display to work with and not using external displays, I would have to learn a completely new workflow and just completely change the way I use the computer in order to go to like a 13-inch screen. So Emily has a 13-inch MacBook Pro, and I've tried to use it, and it just feels wrong. The real estate that I get with a 15-inch feels comfortable because it's what I've known for so long and I've gotten accustomed to using. And I don't want to have to feel like I have to plug into an external display to get that same kind of real estate for the things that I do. So I'm really keeping my eye on what happens with the 16-inch line. And I have a feeling whatever they bring to the 16-inch Pro is going to really make me question whether I don't just go ahead and replace the machine, or if I deal with not having something that fast or that high performing for a little bit longer, even though I know I'm going to want it just based on everything that we've seen so far.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that, and I too I have a 15-inch like you, and the primary thing I do on it is work, because like there's so much stuff that has been offloaded to my phone, and it was interesting to go from I guess it was 3 years that I was using no, actually it was only a couple of years that I used a Lenovo. I think at the end I was running Ubuntu, and I definitely use multiple displays. I hardly ever use the computer display, and I don't know. I feel like I had a kind of a weird workflow set up. I don't remember anyone else doing it like I did, but I remember when I finally got to get a Mac for my work computer. It changed. I mean, my workflow changed drastically, and I was honestly quite surprised by how much more efficient I got after switching to a Mac. My personal computer at the time I was using, that Lenovo, was a 13-inch MacBook Pro, and a Mac. I also had a Mac Mini, and I did some work stuff at home on those computers, but it wasn't my primary one. It was just something I would like. If I was at home, I didn't want to pull up that Lenovo. I just set it up just enough so that I wouldn't have to pull that out, and so I didn't get to use it a lot that way. But I love the 15-inch screen. I think I would love the 16-inch screen. I wouldn't want to do it on a 13-inch screen. I like the real estate it comes with. Like the power, I don't think I need the power at all for any of the stuff that I really do on here. But I love the size of the screen.
Yeah, for work, I certainly don't need anything near as powerful as I have. It's just the screen space that makes it, I guess, ideal as kind of the word I'm looking for me. Now for personal, because I do enough with general just creative content, do I need what I have? Probably not, but it is nice to have it. There are definitely significant gains between my personal machine and the work machine for some of the things that I do, if I were to try to compare them. And they're almost identical. Like the biggest difference is my personal machine has double the RAM, which plays a pretty significant role in some of the photo-related editing performance. But, in general, all of it's relative. Like I could do everything I do on the old 2011 MacBook Pro or 2010 MacBook Pro that I had. It would take a little bit.
Yeah.
And by a little bit, you're still only talking, a few minutes tops. It would be frustrating to use, but it's only because I know better, not because it wouldn't do it. And so, yeah, I think that's a classic first world problem. But it's certainly one that can play a role. Especially if I were still doing that type of work as my primary source of income, being able to do that on the fly in the field in front of a customer every second counts. because I'm not doing it as my primary source of income anymore, and it's, at this point I call it a hobby. I mean, it does still generate a little bit of income here and there, but because it's more of a hobby, I don't have to worry about those more finely tuned, performance gains. It's just that I like having them because I am who I am.
Oh, I mean, you like computers. You're a computer enthusiast. Of course, you want like a really good quality computer. You're gonna find a reason to use, use those that extra RAM from time to time. And when you use it, you appreciate it more so than maybe somebody who's not a computer enthusiast. Some people, there are people that are like, they. It's not that they don't appreciate it. It's just that it's not important to them.
So I know we're getting close to our normal, kind of time frame. I do have one after show item.
Yeah.
I was just thinking. Do we have anything else that we feel like we need to button up for the main conversation, or does that feel like a good kind of closing segment?
I think this is that was the end of the show, and we have an after show this time.
As always, you can reach us on Twitter at untitled_hosts with an S. We also have an Instagram account with the same name at untitled_hosts. You can send us an email at untitled.hosts@gmail.com. And you can visit the feed directly at theuntitledpodcast.com. Have a good night. All right. Well, in that case, the item is Christmas trees, which is completely out of left field. But we decided, we were talking about it over the weekend. I think we're going to do a live tree again this year, and this will be the first time since Emily and I have been together that we will have a live tree. And part of that, so I've had live trees in the past, but we've had cats for a long time, and both have passed over the past year and a half, or both had to be, unfortunately, euthanized. And so without any pets in the house, we thought, all right, well, let's just do a live tree this year, because I miss it personally, and Emily has actually never had a live tree.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I grew up with a lot of times with an artificial tree, and then a few times with a live tree. And then my first Christmas in my own apartment, I had a live tree. And that tree I got from the Boy Scouts. We went and bought it from the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts were doing fundraisers and selling Christmas trees as a fundraiser, and I thought that was really cool. And then I moved into an apartment that was like artificial trees only. That was all that was allowed, and that was a lot of fun. And I think for the past 4 years, I just haven't put up a tree because my kids are only with me for 2 weekends out of the month, and I was just like, it felt like a lot more trouble than it was worth, and I was planning to sell my artificial tree this year.
Yeah, Emily found.
It's not a humbug.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's not a humbug. It's not a humbug or anything. It's just I'm being pragmatic about it.
Yeah, Emily found there's a farm in Tuscaloosa apparently where you have two different options, and I don't remember which is which, but it's basically you have pre-cut trees that they bring in from the Carolinas that I think are fir, Douglas fir, or you can go cut a different type of tree that they grow on the farm, and I think that was a spruce of some sort. I may have those reversed. It may be the fir that grows natively, and the spruce has to be brought in because it requires colder climates. Either way,
but they're gorgeous trees.
Yeah, I mean, either way, both are phenomenal choices. But so I also went ahead, to this morning actually, and ordered a stand because I don't have a stand for a live tree because I got rid of all that stuff ages ago when I bought an artificial tree, and found out there's this. I'll have to look it up, but there's this stand that is from the Netherlands that like it has a foot pump, so you put the tree in, and you don't have to worry about trying to adjust multiple screws or anything. You just kind of reach under the tree and you press down, and it clamps. It brings the clamps in on the tree.
Oh, nice.
And once it detects that there's a certain amount of tension and grip, that it actually locks itself in place. Sounds like it's a ridiculously easy setup, and that's kind of what I was after. It's like if I'm going to deal with this, I am not going to deal with those antiquated, like you screw, an eye bolt in on one side and then the other, and then the other two sides, and try to keep it level and everything else. No, I need it to be easy and something that I could theoretically do solo if I had to. And,
yes.
So that stand should arrive Friday. It's either Friday or Saturday. And I'll make sure it doesn't leak, since it also has a 2.5 quart water capacity or something like that.
Yeah. So let me ask you, do you put up your tree before or after Thanksgiving?
Always after. I have never put up a tree prior to Thanksgiving. The fastest that I have ever put up a tree has been the day after Thanksgiving. And most of the time, it ends up being the first weekend in December.
I was always, it has to be in December, not just after Thanksgiving. Can't be in November. I've since not cared about that, and people that want to put up their Christmas tree right after, because I've got two neighbors that have their Christmas trees up. People that want to put up their Christmas tree right after Halloween, that makes you happy, go right ahead. This is a free country. It doesn't hurt anybody, and it makes you happy. Why not? It doesn't. It used to quote unquote offend my sensibilities. I was like, I can go fuck myself.
Yeah, growing up, it was always just kind of the tradition that you'd have Thanksgiving, and then the day after Thanksgiving, everybody would be home, and we'd pull out, decorations and get things set up, and it would be kind of a day after / through the weekend activity. And then when I first moved out, it just kind of happened that it would always fall on that first weekend in December that I would have time to worry about it. And so that would be typically when I would set stuff up. But all of it was from more of a pragmatic perspective than anything. I just don't want anything up for Christmas before Thanksgiving. But once we've reached Thanksgiving, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I don't care if you want to blast Christmas music for a month. There was a period where Christmas music really got under my skin. And part of that was because I worked for the group that puts up Fantasy and Lights at Callaway Gardens.
Oh, boy.
And that starts, you start actually pulling cable and putting speakers up and everything else in July. And so there was a long stretch of having to listen to music because you were testing different things for, 6 months. And at that point, once I finished that, I couldn't listen to Christmas music for a few years. It got under my skin too much.
Oh, I totally understand that. I've gotten to where, I really don't put up any Christmas decorations because I don't really do anything Christmassy at my house. I am going to families' houses, and they have Christmas decorations, so it just seemed like I would be putting it up for me, and I'm not even going to be home to appreciate it. So, actually, if I was going to put up Christmas decorations, I think putting it up the weekend after Thanksgiving sounds really lovely. But one of the things that my favorite week of the year is the week after Christmas before New Year. I love that week. As a whole week, if I'm going to pick a week, that is the week that I just think is the best of the the 52nd week of the year is the best week because Christmas is over. You've had that fun. You've had the festive fun. And now it's time, you get to play with your toys. You don't have school. You have a whole week where there's just not a lot expected of you. And that's always, for so much of my life, has been a great week. And for the past few years, it's been a great week because I have my kids all week long. And so I often associate that week with like the Christmas tree is still up, but you don't have all the hustle and bustle of Christmas. And that's nice. And then there's also the, holiday popcorn, the 3 popcorns. And so I can remember a few days, one year, when I was in high school, hanging out with my cousins. We were playing whatever video games we were playing and eating like the cheese, butter, and caramel popcorn out of the popcorn tin. And I just have such good memories of that week. And it's often, you still have the Christmas decorations up, and that's nice.
Yeah, I tend to enjoy that week, especially over the past couple of years, because I've timed my vacation since I'm able to do so just because of different things, where it starts just before Christmas, and then I don't come back to work until, a couple of days into January. And so that week has gotten back to being just a no responsibilities, fun, just relax and decompress week again. And that's been really nice.
Yep. That's how that week has turned back into a no responsibilities, chill week, and then it culminates into New Year's Eve, where you get to go and have a New Year's Eve celebration.
Well, you previously got to. We'll see what that looks like this year.
Yeah, I could do what I did last New Year's for this New Year's, and it would be responsible and low risk. I ended up at the boxcar containers at Ghost Train and drank some beers with some friends last New Year's Eve, and it's outside and they got heaters going, and it ended up being a really good New Year's. So I feel like I could do the exact same thing and feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, the past 4 years have been pretty much the same for us, which is relaxing and at home. And to timing wise, of course, 4 years would put it just after Jacob was born. And so we just haven't really done anything for New Year's since then. And probably, at this point, it's kind of nice for us to be able to have an evening where we're staying up and chatting or doing whatever that is just relaxing. Most of the time we have fairly different schedules as far as when we would go to bed or get up. Emily is typically in bed sometime between 9 and 10 at the latest, and I tend to be awake until closer to midnight pretty regularly. And so New Year's Eve tends to be the only day that edges closer to those meetings.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it's just that I don't require near as much sleep and tend to be more of a night owl than a morning person anyway. And so that particular evening, we tend to both stay up for about the same amount of time and then just call it a day.
Well, I was going to say, not being single last New Year's was great. I have gotten to, like, I'm the same way. Like, I feel I need usually a few hours less sleep than Becca does, and so one of several things usually ends up happening. Either we'll usually go to bed together, but I'll have some downtime and look at stuff on my phone until I get sleepy and fall asleep. But lately I've been going to bed. We've been going to bed at the same time and waking up early, and I'll wake up and head home, and so that I'm home for my kids, for them to do school, and I start work, and she might sleep an hour more and get her sleep in and have some coffee and whatever. But I spent several New Year's Eve single after not being single, and that's like it's not even that I didn't appreciate being single, but it's just I don't know. I just always felt like it's nice to have someone to kiss on New Year's Eve.
I just remember the big thing for me going from not single to single and then not single again. The single New Year's, I just didn't have any interest. It was it was just another day. I didn't care to go out or stay up or do anything.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just more apathetic about it in general.
Well, it's funny. I've had as a single person, one of my best New Year's was as a single person, but I didn't put emphasis on, I must, I must, but it was just it would be nice. It would be nice. And so it's just, yeah. I always like a good party too, so.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that once we finally reach whatever a post-pandemic world looks like, we're going to have to throw a big party just for the hell of it.
I think there are going to be, for the people that are left, there are going to be a lot of big parties. But I'm kind of, I have some concerns right now because, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
All of the numbers are trending in the wrong direction. If we're talking about the United States as a whole.
Yeah.
If we start looking at what other countries are doing, then it's more of a mixed bag. But in the States, all of the numbers are trending the wrong direction for what we want. So yeah, we'll see.
The only numbers that look good right now are the supposed the supposed effectiveness of a couple of vaccines that are nearing completion.
I will say there's one other number that does look manageable. I wouldn't say good, but that's the R0, and that the way it's described for the rate of infection.
Yes.
So it's still just over 1 in a lot of states, even though number of cases and all are climbing. But for comparison, it was around 3 at the beginning of the pandemic, and that was basically exponential rate of transfer.
Yeah.
So as long as it remains in the sub 1.5 category, I'm not saying that's good, because ideally we want it below 1 or at 1, right? That's what everybody has talked about with trying to maintain distance and the mask wearing and everything else. But it is not impressive, but it is interesting that hasn't increased lately. Now, it may be that that's delayed as well, and that's where I just don't know enough about how the numbers are derived to speak intellectually about it. But it's kind of interesting that number has not peaked in most states above 1.5, even amidst every other number increasing quite a bit.
Right. I think, it's interesting. It's we know the bump we're seeing now is based on what people were doing around Halloween. And that comes as no surprise. I think we're going to see a fairly significant bump mid-December and a fairly significant bump early to mid-January. It's just because people can't not.
Yeah, I would expect the worst rate or the worst numbers that we're going to see are going to be end of January, 1st of February.
Yeah.
And it's going to be mostly driven from mid to end of December.
Yep.
So we'll certainly see. I don't know. I'm concerned about what those numbers are going to look like, but I'm going to do my part and try to keep myself as safe as possible, and we'll see what everybody else does.
Me too. My only concern is that everyone else might fuck it up for us, and that being a variant of the disease that is no longer affected by a vaccine. That would be bad. That'd be bad. So let's end it on a low note.
I was going to say, that's a heck of a downer to end on. We got to come up with at least another statement to toss in there. We'll go from Christmas to the morbid.
I don't know. I got nothing. This is the 2020 ending of a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Because I don't have anything to come up with either. It's funny because you can go from talking about something that should theoretically be fun and entertaining, and not even half a sentence later, you're talking about a pandemic that has just upended civilization as we know it for the better part of a year. Yeah. It will be over. I mean, we've had pandemics before, and they did end. So it will end. And it does look like the end might be quite a bit better than some have expected, or at least, So, well, I think the positive piece is just that there at least now appears to be a possible ending in sight.
Yes. Come July 4th, 2021, things might start to be looking normal again. And people won't be dying, so this won't be killing as many people. So, you want to end it on a happy note? I'll end it on a happy note. When we went camping, my buddy wanted to stop over at the Jacks right before you get to the where we have to get off the interstate to get to the Cheehaw Wilderness, and so since we actually caravan down there, so there's 4 of us that drove down. Together, and the fifth person was separate from us. But drove down. He wants to go to Jack's. We're going through the drive-through. I'm like 2 cars behind my buddy Ellery, and I got my window down because it's a lovely day, and I'm about to go through the drive-through, and I hear from the intercom someone asking Ellery, "Is there anything else you'd like with that?" To which he responds, "Yeah, let's just get Trump out of the White House now." I lost it, man. It was so funny. I just was not I was not expecting that. It was really funny.
Well, it's we at least did it, even if he's somehow or another distorting reality around himself to think that there's a path forward. That's not the case.
Yeah,
he'll be out come January.
Yeah. That's okay. That might be interesting. So,
and the other high note there is that I do love the quote about I don't know if it was specifically referencing the Secret Service, but the statement was that we're pretty good about escorting trespassers out of the White
House. Nice.
All right, I think that calls it a wrap.
Yeah, man.
Have a good night.
You as well.